It is my absolute privilege and pleasure to welcome Jacoba Matapo to the stage for our keynote this morning. Jacoba has ancestral ties to Seumu, Samoa and Leiden, Holland. She's the first Pro-Vice-Chancellor Pacific at Auckland University of Technology. She's an Associate Professor in Pacific Early Childhood Education with over 15 years' experience and expertise in educational leadership, spanning initial teacher education, university leadership and leadership in early childhood education. She has led key Pacifica education projects, anchoring Pacific philosophy and pedagogies for learner success. Her work advocates for the value of Pacific Indigenous knowledge systems in education and the possibilities of transformation through relational ecologies, storytelling, and the art of embodied literacies. I'm very much looking forward to her speaking this morning on reweaving relational worlds, ancestral wisdom, Pacific philosophy, and critical posthuman theory in ecological regeneration. Please welcome to the stage Associate Professor Jacoba Matapo.
I might be the first at PESA to present barefoot, okay, so I'm doing it barefoot today. All right, here we go. Ililepu, deep is the sound felt in your body. Hear the call. Sensations under your skin stirring movement in knowing self. Calling upon ancestors, gods, spirit, time and space. Knowing does not belong to you alone. Deep in the earth the call vibrates, felt under the feet of those before. Fanua, earth, with its own life forces and flows, regenerates new life with old. Knowledge has constraints, unlike the wisdom of fanua. Deep is the breath you take to blow. The winds around you share in your breath. To fill your lungs, give life to your blood and brain. Breathe in your knowing, breathe out your wisdom. Generate understanding. Deep are the waters of Wananuia Kiwa. Ililepu, another voice calls, the inextricable va that binds us all. My appreciation to you all for holding this space, this relational space, the va that we all share. I hope this presentation connects with people, connects you with place, with people, and our stories. As we journey through Indigenous Pacific philosophies, reweaving, restoring, relational, ecological, and ancestral wisdoms. I'd like to acknowledge the mana fenua, the custodians of this fenua, Ngai Tuahuriri and Ngai Tahu. I would also like to thank Te Hurinui for his amazing emceeing, and also Christoph for his manakitanga and all of the committee's efforts in organising this beautiful event. Having been part of PESA for over a decade, I feel that this has been a reunion or a reweaving of old and new friends. I acknowledge Professor Nesta Devine, who has deep roots planted within PESA and who has also planted the seed and love of philosophy of education in my own academic journey. Whawhataitele lava le tau mawhai. I would also like to acknowledge my Tongan sister Jean Tersina, who's standing over there. She journeys with me in Pacific philosophies, and especially in our tautua, in our service to our Pacific early childhood communities. And I acknowledge you, Jean. So in the spirit of the question that was raised in Kalmika's opening keynote, ko wai'o? Ko kia vi toku maunga, ko eloloa toku awa, ko si umu toku hapu, ko Samoa toku iwi, ko whaalongo Jacoba Matapo toku ingoa. In the spirit of why that Carl Mika expressed, I wish to share with you a Samoan perspective of vai. And I'm going to pause now to tell you the story of my water through movement.
From the clouds of Upolu, rain falls down the mountain of Tiavi, through crevices, dirt, and through the sleeps of time, to arise and spring out of Loloa, the fresh water that nurtures our village.
O si umu o le nu o lauti nā, o le whānau o lauta mā I sau mai o Leiden, Holland. My mountain in Samoa is Kiavi. I have ancestral ties to Si Umu village, and on my father's side, Leiden, Holland. I am a daughter of Te Moana Nui a Kiwa, our Pacific Ocean. I am a matai, which is a Samoan chiefly title, and the title I hold is whaalongo, and it means to listen. So it's a reminder I need to listen. I'm an associate professor in Pacific Early Childhood Education, and I have a deep love for Pacific philosophy. And I believe this started in my home, my mother as my first teacher. All right, so I've been busy in the hotel room doing a lot of weaving. So the weavings on your table I've been working on during the conference. But I do want to share with you a little bit about the lalanga. So at your tables you'll see pandanus leaf. In Samoan we call this fala. And it's been prepared for you. It was grown in my village in Si Umu, and my ainga, my family, spent days preparing these leaves, bleaching it in ocean water, and for fala, laying it out on the rocks to dry. It was shipped to New Zealand, fumigated, then shipped to New Zealand. And I share this mea sina, this gift with you. And the story of the mat will be shared towards the end of the presentation. You can see my unfinished mat here at the front. So throughout the presentation, we're going to take pauses. And in these pauses, you're invited to weave. Okay? And we're going to reweave philosophy this morning. At each pause, another person will have a turn. So there should be a few on the table. So just one person at a time with one laufala can have a go and then pass it around in the next go. I've made a little video for you to help you out. So please pick up the laufala. You'll notice that there are 4 strands. As you can see in the image, 3 strands will be facing your right. So make sure the 3 strands are facing your right and the 1 strand is facing the left. Okay? 3 strands facing the right, 1 strand facing the left. And the method is written there, under and over and repeat. But I'm going to play the video for you to help you out, okay? Here we go. Watch the video. We've got our pro weaver over here walking around as well. Here we go. There you go. So under, flick it over the middle, and then over. And then you're back at the start again. Okay? Do you want to watch that again? Okay. Oh. So you got your 3 under and over the middle one, and then the one on the left goes over. Okay? And you got it? One more time. Okay, get it the right way round. There we... You start with the 3, okay? So it's the one on the far side of the 3. Yep. Okay, let's do it again. Okay, here we go. Under. Yep, over that middle one, and then the left one over. Okay? You got it? One more time. This is the philosophy of weaving, all right? Okay, I am going to play it one more time, okay? Here we go. Okay, ready? Under, over that middle one, and then the left one, over. Okay? I was going to ask you to multitask, but it might be a little bit challenging. My task was to say, you have to say one word that describes you and one word that describes your philosophy while you weave. Okay? So those who are holding the weave right now, while you're doing the under and over, share one word that describes you and one word that describes your philosophy. There we go. Go for it. Share. I just want to take a photo right now of all of you. It's wonderful. Got some good collaborations going on at the tables. Okay, one more time. Under, over the middle one, and then that left one goes over. Yep. Okay, I'm going to keep us moving along. No, yep, once you've done that and you shared, you can put it down. Yep. Now, the purpose is the weaving you're going to share with somebody else. So you're actually going to pick up another weaving that another person has done, and you're actually going to share. So take turns sharing. Yep. Okay, because you're going to weave your stories together. Okay, so you're going to take turns to weave different ones. Okay. All right, so just like your weaving, there are 4 strands to the presentation today. Pacific philosophies, stories and cosmogony, Pacific ecological relationality, posthuman critical theory, and Pacific education research. And then finally, I share with you a recent TLRI study that I've been involved with. It's Pepe Mea Mea, which is the Samoan conceptualization of infants and toddlers, which is an absolutely beautiful study grounded in Indigenous philosophy and pedagogy. All right, so the term Indigenous, and I have to thank Carl Mika for this, because he was an advisor of mine during my doctorate, and we had some really hearty conversations around this concept of Indigenous. So I use the term Indigenous with caution, mindful of the complexities it carries with Pacific philosophy. Mika reminds us that labeling anything with a fixed definition can be problematic, as it contradicts the fluid and relational nature of Indigenous practices. Historically, the label Indigenous has often been imposed through colonial frameworks serving political and systemic agendas that seek to define and confine ethnic groups. Mika reframes this, emphasising that Indigenous peoples are descendants of the first inhabitants who identify the land, regardless of whether they form the majority or minority in a population. Kornai Helu Tharman states that in Pacific contexts such as Samoa and Tonga, Indigenous peoples typically constitute the majority. Within these societies, Indigenous knowledge systems have evolved over generations, rooted in culture-specific practices and philosophies. These systems are deeply relational and ecological, reflecting the interconnectedness of people, land, waters, and cosmos. Within the Aotearoa New Zealand context, there is an inextricable relationship between tangata moana, Pacific peoples, and tangata fenua, the Indigenous peoples of Aotearoa. It is complex and multifaceted, deeply rooted in ancestral and cultural connections, ocean navigation, as well as post-colonial histories and contemporary socio-political dynamics. The colonial era significantly impacted the Pacific peoples right across the region, and tangata whenua, albeit in different ways. For Pacific peoples, colonialism often meant the establishment of European control over their home islands, resulting in ecological and economic exploitation, cultural erosion, and migration. Lua Manu Vau Winnie Laban reminds us that the Pacific is our context. New Zealand is a Pacific nation. We share the waters of Te Moana Nui a Kiwa. Winnie Laban goes on to say, Pacific people have been coming to this land for around 1,000 years, according to our stories, such as the shared ties to Hawaii and to Rangiatia. The people who became the tangata whenua of Aotearoa, New Zealand, set sail from the Pacific Islands and headed south to settle in this land. She says the Indigenous people of Aotearoa in the South Pacific have an ancient relationship with the people of Moana. These are ancient migration stories reflecting global and even cosmic interrelationships. Another favourite scholar of mine, Abeli Hauofa, Tongan scholar, reminds us that the Pacific Ocean, or what he calls Oceania, does not refer to islands in the sea, as explorers had assumed, but rather suggests that our sea of islands are connected and linked by the liquid flow of the blue moana, our Pacific Ocean. The former sees islands as small and isolated dots, yet to be found and named lost in the blue-coloured map of the Age of Discovery. The latter sees islands as roomy environments that typify continental spaces, where the ocean is part of island spatiality, already shared and protected by the oceanic people for centuries. We're giving weaving another go. Now pass it around. Here we go. Weaving philosophy. Share a word that describes you and one word that has stood out for you in the presentation so far. There's a bit of laughter coming from that middle table. It must be a good word. All right, we're going to move along to the next slide now. Okay, within Pacific philosophy, the decolonising agenda has evoked an Indigenous struggle to reclaim lands, waters, language and knowledge. And Linda Tuhiwai-Smith has written extensively about decolonising and even decolonising philosophies and research and epistemology. Dominant forms of Western philosophy produce certain conditions of the human subject. An example is the relationship of human to land as owner or tenant, an idea foreign to Pacific Indigenous concepts of self, and that personhood is intimately associated in kinship with land itself. Consequently, Pacific concepts confront Western principles of ownership, exploitation or commodification of land. The genealogical and biological relation presented in the concepts fenua for Māori, fanua in Samoan, fonua in Tongan, vanua in Fijian, all directly refer to the land as being placenta. Here, the land as life is a life-giving force, such as before birth, in the embryonic state where it sustains a life force, and even after birth, and offers renewal following death. The human subject here in relation to land and its materiality is not separate. The hierarchy of relations is contested here, human ownership as property versus the agentic life force of fanua. We cannot tame how the earth contracts and expands like birth, death, and rebirth. Samoan philosopher Va'ai reminds us that living ecologically and according to a fanua-based consciousness acknowledges that there'll always be ecological disconnections and disruptions, such as fishing or harvesting, but to be practiced with an ethics of restraint. Every disconnection must be followed by a reconnection. Every focus on materiality must be matched by a focus on spirituality. What is physical is spiritual. The term ele ele in Samoan is dirt, but it also means blood, which, as Va'ai has conceptualized, provides a placenta politics within subjectivity. He states, with fanua, we are dirt people, and we share ele ele. He reminds us that in the Samoan context, our forebears put in place this philosophy of restraint so that we might recognize the spiritual part. This is also a mechanism to put in place and to monitor greed and selfishness. Another aspect of fanua philosophy is about pause. It allows an active natural process of renewal and transformation to occur. These are deliberate attempts at respecting non-human intervention as the process, allowing fanua and humanity a liberating space to heal, renew, articulate, and activate new pathways. This is a negotiated space between humans and the natural world. In Va'ai's conceptualization of restraint, time revolves around fanua time. He says we unconsciously bend time or slow down time for the natural process of healing to take place and for regenerative systems to work. It is part of the cycle of life and time, respecting death, decay, inactivity, and passivity. He says pause privileges the beauty in contradictions. It nurses growth through contraction. It embraces the sacredness of everyone and everything. It allows time for relatedness. It keeps space for those who cannot keep up. It is an all-time restorative healer. I share with you an image taken by an Indigenous photographer, Joseph Haga of the Solomon Islands. And I wrote this poem in response to his photo here. Entangled are the roots of decisions that spread deep and wide in Solomon's realm where the oceanic waters collide, islands collapsing with the rising grip of the sea, where ancestors live and walk in a land free. Bare are the feet that tread the sands of time, witnessing the swells of rising tides. Pacific peoples living with the consequences unseen of capitalism's march, relentless and keen. The entangled roots of decisions a silent cry as the waters encroach, ecosystems die. Solomon's children gaze upon the waters deep as markets far away trade their futures to keep. For islands once emerald now bear the cost of a world indulging in gain with no thought of what's lost. Strand by strand, under the weight of the world's heavy hand, and as the Solomons face the ocean's rising dance, a child holds a mirror to the world and a final chance to untangle the roots of decisions, to change the tide, to honour the promises and ancestral ties. For Pacific peoples where kinship is place, they bear the burden of the globe in their embrace. Entangled are the roots of decisions that spread deep and wide, bare are the feet that tread the sands of time. Another pause to weave. This time, if you can share one word that describes you and another word that describes your philosophy. right, I'm just going to bring us back. You must be getting good at weaving now. Moving now to the tensions of colonisation and its encumbrance upon Pacific Indigenous epistemologies across the region, I wish to momentarily call into question the human subject that is historically associated with the great chain of being, anchored in Eurocentric patriarchal social structures and ideology. This particular human subject exists within a Western view that places the human in a particular hierarchical order, first being God and subsequently human, sentient beings, plants, and the non-living. The idea of more or less evolved beings that informs the great chain of being offered a framework of thought that was extrapolated to the understanding of different human groups. The idea of uncivilized, savage humans who had not yet achieved full humanity became one of the central notions that justified colonisation. The movement in Pacific education discourse has evolved through postmodern, post-structural, and more recently new materialist and posthuman theory. However, limits do remain in the ontological position in scholarship through these traditions. They do tend to exclude Indigenous perspectives, which are grounded in ecological ontologies. So what are the traces that the great chain of being has left in our way of understanding the world today? Woolf argues that colonialism is an ongoing structure of domination, which Glenn 2015 contends that often swung and still does between the poles of elimination and coercive exploitation. Racism has similarly been defined as oscillating between extermination and exploitation. Pacific scholars such as Va'ai, Tui Atua, Emelina Casimira, Kornai Helu Tharman, Manulani Maya, Unasai Nambobo Baba, to name a few, have written extensively about this, the exploitation of land. And it is evident that the deep scars of colonialism and neo-colonialism upon Pacific peoples mirrors the scars of the fanua. So how do we reimagine the human subject as coexistential and co-evolutionary with world, including non-human worlds that are constituted by the natural world and material world, including cultural symbols, our practices, movements and flows, artifacts and technologies? I could go on. I want to shift now to posthuman theory, which does take human supremacism in philosophy to task. It recognises and aims to de-centre and destabilise anthropocentrism and the perpetuating traps of representationalism and universalism that prioritise human over non-human. There are different tranches of posthumanism, but through the work of philosopher Rosie Braidotti, the intellectual genealogy traces back to Deleuze and Guattari, Spinoza, Nietzsche, and even across theories of new materialism. There is renewed attention to materiality, vitalism, ecologies, flora, fauna, climate, elements, things, and interconnectedness, which has created openings across academic fields regarding who and what has the capacity to know. If humans are not the only possible subjects or objects of study and research, then a wealth of different possibilities emerge. Critical inquiries works against marginalisation, oppression and inequity. Posthuman research expands on these same objectives, but on a planetary scale. As the distance between these ventures continue to lessen in research, critical forms of posthumanism, such as the work of Rosie Braidotti, have led to questions about how methodologies might respond to injustice with broader ecological and material contexts. Weaving time. These are our pauses. Remember to share one word that describes you, and it has to be a different word if you've already shared one, a different word, and a different word that describes your philosophy. All right, I'll bring us back together now. Thank you. Malo. All right, I'm going to move us through to a research project that I've been involved in. So I'd like to now shift to a recent TLRI study, a Samoan Indigenous research project in the early childhood context within Aotearoa, New Zealand, and Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland. In the centre is my colleague, Dr. Tawhili Utumapu McBride, and on your left is Dr. Salah Fa'asaulala Tangoilelangi Leota, who is a pioneer in Samoan full immersion languageness in early childhood education in New Zealand, and that is called Aonga Amata. And Aonga Amata have been around in New Zealand for almost 40 years. And there's a rich history of our languageness in New Zealand. So our project was co-designed with 6 Samoan ECE centres and 6 English medium ECE centres from South Auckland. And it took place from 2021 and 2022 in a multi-phased approach. But for the purpose of this presentation, I'm just going to focus on the first year. Okay, so why indigenise infant and toddler pedagogy for Samoan within the New Zealand context? So Samoan peoples growing up in New Zealand and identifying as New Zealand-born Samoan brings complexity and subjectivity, particularly navigating culture and Samoan epistemology, within a location other than their ancestral lands. For the nurturing of Samoan identity, culture, language, spirituality, there must be consideration of Samoan epistemology to inform culturally sustaining pedagogies in early childhood education. The highest proportion, which is 48.7% of all Pacific people in New Zealand, are Samoan and are primarily New Zealand-born Samoan. Most of the Samoan New Zealand population live in Auckland, so 65% live in Auckland. And although the Samoan language is the 3rd most common language spoken in New Zealand, only 44% of New Zealand-born Samoans are able to speak Samoan. So currently in Aotearoa, there are only 48 full immersion early childhood Aonga Amata, which only makes up 1.04% of the total early childhood education sector. Despite fiscal challenges across the ECE sector and competing ECE philosophies and approaches to practice, Aonga Amata retains a strong commitment to sustaining Indigenous knowledges, cultural practices, for pepe mea mea and tamaiti. So those are our infants and toddlers and young children. With a plethora of international ECE discourse giving prominence to universal notions of the infant and toddler and their development and pedagogy, Ramika and Glasgow remind us that there is very little attention in research regarding Pacific ethnic-specific philosophy and pedagogy for infants and toddlers. The majority of Pacifica children, including Samoan, are enrolled in English medium early childhood centres. And there is a concern raised by transnational Samoan scholars about the sustainability of culture and language within the New Zealand context. Keep moving. All right. Can I just have a show of hands who are early childhood in the house? Love you all, our early childhood people. You're doing great work. So I do want to talk a little bit about the New Zealand early childhood curriculum here because it's a very important document. So Indigenous conceptualisations of the child and childhood. So we're going to delve into Te Whāriki a wee bit. It's New Zealand's early childhood curriculum. And although the 1996 and 2017 version of Te Whāriki draws upon Western theories, including sociocultural theory, constructivist theories, ecological models, it is the kaupapa Māori and mataranga Māori embedded in Te Whāriki that offers another way of being and knowing and pedagogy in the early childhood context. Jenny Ritchie reminds us that the Māori image of the child is that of entangled histories, spirituality and materiality located with fenua. And these include the geographical ties to place, one's tūranga waiwai. The notion of the individual child is challenged through a Māori perspective as the child is constituted within the collective. And in the history of Indigenous education for Māori children, it was situated within the collective, the whānau, the iwi, the hapu, where children contributed to daily tasks and decision-making. Reedy suggests the child was and still is the incarnation of ancestors, the living link with yesterday, the binding rope that ties people together, and the embodiment and aspirations of tomorrow. So I want to move us back into the Pepe Mea Mea research project. I share with you our amazing Samoan early childhood centres and our English medium early childhood partners who are champions of this work. But for this presentation, I am going to focus on the first year, which was only with our aonga amata. The diversity of teacher representation within the project illuminated intersexual cultural nuances, such as differences between New Zealand-born Samoan teachers and Samoan-born teachers, and also the distinct role of elders within the Samoan early childhood education context. The intergenerational reach of Samoan Indigenous knowledge was also reflected in the makeup of the Samoan centres involved. Samoan teachers were engaged as co-leaders in developing a Samoan pedagogical framework. In the first year, only Ngangana Samoa, Samoan language, was spoken, and that facilitated deep connections to Samoan Indigenous philosophies. Through the Samoan language, our teachers came together to theorise personal and professional practices and understanding of Samoan subjectivity, of wholeness and spirituality. Teachers reported the significance of using heritage language and literacies, weaving, dance, stories, to conceptualise the complex Samoan concepts. Teachers also reported that the deficiency of English translations made it difficult to interpret Samoan terms into English. Teachers said that this further complicated curriculum and pedagogy to be culturally sustainable. For teachers and researchers, the talanoa move freely between multiple paradigms, such as Indigenous thinking and ECE discourse. The flows of dialogue generated Indigenous knowledge sharing. However, sacred Indigenous knowledge, such as specific intergenerational practices, were not as readily shared or documented, as the rightful genealogy of these knowledges belong to specific village or ainga. Teachers share the natural environment and ancestral relations were important to them as they express the following. Whaasau mapepese I whafo. It is important for infants and toddlers to experience the morning dew. We sing to them outside. Infants and toddlers are sa'olotonga. They are the freedom. They carry the continuum of freedom for the whole collective. Throughout the first phase of the research, teachers shared many references to the embodied dimensions of their teaching practice with infants, paying attention to the child's nonverbal embodied cues. The embodied pedagogies of infants and toddlers were theorised through Samoan Indigenous thinking, meaning they were intuitively connected to the interactions between the body and the environment. Thus, the influence of hands or touch pedagogy surfaced. The way in which hands communicate with infants and toddlers play a vital role ensuring they are cared for through a puti, which is nurturing, loving and gentle interactions. Samoan wisdoms are communicated through the hands, such as traditional healing practices like fofo, or milimili, when your hands are rubbed together to create warmth. As a newborn, the infant requires the experiences of touch that match the softness of their skin. Teachers discuss the skin of infants as mo'a, fresh and supple, and that the pedagogy of the hands is part of the first experiences of touch communication for the child. Infants' experiences of touch after birth include fesi'i, which is being carried or held, and the hands that carry must speak of alofa, which is our love. This expression of love and care in practice, teachers reported, continues through their fesi'i interactions. Teachers noted how important it was to ensure a puti, the nurturing moments, were unhurried, and the timing and pace of embodied practices followed the rhythm of the child. So throughout the first year of the study, we had master weavers. They're called matua u'u. Matua means elder and u'u is to hold, so they're the master weavers of holding the lalanga. And they worked alongside us in the research project with our research community in teaching Samoan weaving methods of fala, which is a baby mat. The weaving events supported teachers' aspirations to awaken a dying traditional art in Samoa and a traditional practice for infants and toddlers. Teachers and cultural experts have reported today that the weaving and gifting of baby mats is no longer a common practice in Samoa. Traditionally, the baby mat was woven by the mother or grandmother before or while the mother was pregnant. The act of weaving before conception or during pregnancy connects the weaver and the infant through acts of alofa, love, and through the genealogy of the mat. Now, you'll notice this unfinished mat at the front here. This is my first fala, which will be for my first grandchild. It's been with me for about 4 years now. I'm not in a rush to finish it because I have teenagers. I might even undo some. But this mat is a living manifestation of fanua consciousness. It will connect to my pele, my little pepe, one day when it is born. So I live it. I live the fala pepe. Stories are woven into the mat. Aspirations and hope are woven into the mat. The threads hold stories of ancestral ties and are critical to the cultural well-being of the child. The lalanga or the threads are from the laufala, the pandanus plant, which is rooted in the village ele, the dirt, the blood. In the New Zealand context, a pepe mea, as an infant, may not have the opportunity to return back to their fanua, back to their ancestral lands. So when the child lays on the mat, they lay on the ele, or the dirt blood that is their tofi, their inheritance. The mat holds its own pedagogy to teach the pepe mea, to hold them, to reconnect them to their fanua. It is a living fanua philosophy. So this goes on around the pedagogical framework. This is published so you can access this online, but it talks about the key principles that rose up out of the fala pepe, the weaving, and the key touchstones. So we have what we call ma'atatau. So our ma'atatau, which are the rocks, are the securing rocks. And the weaving cannot happen without the rocks. The rocks hold the integrity of the mat for the weaver. But the rocks can be moved. So we might also consider here, as we all think about philosophy, or think in and with philosophy, what are your philosophical touchstones? What is your itulangi? What is the horizon that shapes your view? I'm going to close with a final poem here, and it is called Pepe Mea Mea. We knew you before your birth, your value in collective worth. In dreams of living you bind the past, present and future divide. Like the fanua we walk and the whispers of ancestors talk, you are imagined in form. The weaving that adorns belonging your birthright, inheritance and foresight. Intergenerational reaching, you come into being. Whawhatai te le lava. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jacoba. That was a really lovely way to start this morning, and you've metaphysically woven contemporary forms of philosophy with ancient wisdom and guided us all through doing this effectively and connected us in really deep ways, and we'd just like to thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you want to take some questions?
Yeah, a couple of questions.
Okay, we've got a little bit of time for a couple of questions if anyone would like to put some questions. I feel like everyone's just basking in the experience we've just had. It was so sensory and intellectual and calming.
Hello, thank you very much for your inspiring talk. And I am from Japan, and it's so different from what we do in Japan. You know, we are doing much more seriously. I don't mean seriously that you are not serious. Of course you are serious, but we are so kind of very rigid format of philosophy and presentation. And I think this kind of using the fingers and also song and the poetry is something which is really opening my eyes. And yesterday I talked with Karmika, and there is a kind of this Pacific Ocean is connecting also Japan.
Yes.
But we have been ignoring this. We are always watching China first and then the West. And I think it's really eye-opening together with Karmika and your presentation that you have given us, at least to me, new way of thinking. I'm sorry, I'm getting old. I cannot develop this, but I hope our younger generation will get in touch with your philosophy, and that will open the new perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I do enjoy Kaumika's work, I have to say, and thinking with why and thinking with fanua can create a whole different way of being in philosophy. Thank you, Malo. Thank you for your comment. I have a quick challenge for each of you, actually. Share with me, quick challenge for each of you, share with me 2 words that came up around your tables, because I'd love to hear what they are. We're going to have reciprocity in this space. So let's hear 2 words from each table. Choose 2 words that were shared, and you can share them with the rest of us. We have friendship and community at this table. 2 words. Calming, unfinished. Beautiful. 2 words at this table. Wisdom. Fingerprints. This table?
Pragmatic and dialogical.
Pragmatic and dialogical. The table there? Healing. Teacher. Yep. This table here? 2 words? Even in your heritage language. Listening? Party. Body. Sorry, I'm still thinking of last night. My bad. Table at the back here. Relational. Eclectic. Table at the back. Lovely. Table here.
Fluidity and frustration.
Nailed it with that one. Here we go.
Dream and resilience.
Dream and resilience. Table at the back. Kaumika's table at the back.
Repeat and whimsical.
Table here. You had a lot of laughter at your table. Must be some good words.
It's them, guys.
Ah,
We had creative and we also had eclectic. So
ah, connections. Yeah. This table here, 2 words. Touching.
And transforming.
Transforming. Thank you. This table here, on my whānau at this table here.
hosting and Maori.
Love it. This table here, Vanessa's table. Modi. Yep, searching. Beautiful. Table at the back. Beautiful. So many connections across the room. Modi ora whawhataitele lava mole nei a vanua. Thank you all.
And with that, I invite you to enjoy the connections we've just formed as we all share morning tea together.